Welcome back to Warpaint TV, January 5th, 2010. Once again, I'm Shane Williams here with Chiefs insider Nick Athan. How's it going today, Nick?
Good. How you doing, buddy?
Great. Hey, it's the off season. Let's get right to it. Charlie Weiss, Romeo Crennel, what's the latest?
Well, rumors are that they're in Kansas City or going to be in Kansas City today, and you know that remains to be seen. But clearly, both of them have history with Scott Pioli, and it looks like he's going to go back in his old bag of tricks. And you know, I hate to agree with a columnist, Jason, in the Kansas City Star, but he mentioned that if they bring these two guys in, he still doesn't have an original thought. So, you know, I don't know. I think it's a good move. I think they need they're going to keep Todd Haley, it looks like, for another year. And I think that right now they need two veteran coaches. Charlie Weiss is a good offensive coordinator. Didn't work out very well at Notre Dame. He was in an impossible situation up there. Boosters, the money, the pressure, just something he couldn't handle. And with Romeo Crennel, you know, they waited over a month for him to take the job a year ago. He's been sort of acting as a semi-consultant to the Chiefs organization this past year anyway. So I'm assuming that Crennel is going to be the defensive coordinator, which means Clancy Pandercast is going to be gone. Thank goodness. I mean, I hope they blow out the entire coaching staff and bring in all new ones as they, you know, they're going to keep Haley, like I mentioned. So they just need some change. This organization right now is got a very lucky break Sunday with that win in Denver.
Speaking of which, 9 days ago, you sit down with Jack Harry on NBC 41. 1 week later, Jamal Charles breaks the Chiefs' rushing record. The Denver Broncos don't get in the playoffs because the Chiefs beat them 44-24. You'd mentioned with Jack Harry that Todd Haley had a 50-50 chance of keeping his job. Was it the Denver game that changed that kept his job, or do you think that Pioli had planned on keeping him all along?
I think it helped. You know, we saw something Sunday we haven't seen. We saw a coach who was prepared. We saw players who were prepared. They had a hit him in the mouth mentality, which outside the Pittsburgh game, honestly, we really haven't seen for 4 quarters. And even in the Pittsburgh game, there was a lull there where they didn't play well. They played well for all 4 quarters. You know, Jamal Charles steps up and has a monster game, and I thought it was a class move at the end of the game. He had an opportunity to come back in and break the record, and he wanted his backup to get a chance to run the ball, which I thought was nice. And I thought the way Dwayne Bowe and Todd Haley were on the sidelines, you know, there was a lot of affection there. You know, he seemed to be into it some. And, you know, again, who's out there right now? I mean, Mike Shanahan's, you know, going to Washington. Mike Holmgren's already in Cleveland. Bill Cowher's now meeting with Buffalo for the second time, though I still find it hard to believe that you know, they're going to pay him that kind of money, because Shanahan's going to get $10 to $12 million a year to go to Washington, and I don't think that Buffalo Bills are going to pay that much. But, you know, other than that, there's really nobody else out there. I don't want Brian Billick. You know, John Gruden, I don't think is going to leave ESPN for a couple more years, because he's still under the Tampa Bay payroll for 2 more years. I think he's getting close to $8.5 or $9 million. So, you know, it's a good scenario for the Chiefs. I think the victory helped. I think they can go into 2010 with some positives, and they can take some lessons learned. If Todd Haley can learn from his mistakes, and he made a plethora of them, and if they bring in veteran coaches, I think they got a 50-50 chance of being an 8-8 or better team next year.
And getting back to that Denver game, Derek Johnson really came on. He was benched for Demario Williams better part of the season. He got to play spot duty, and he was on special teams quite a bit. He showed up and showed that it looked like we were watching Texas Longhorn highlights of him playing in Texas. The collective bargaining agreement, if there's a salary cap, he's a restricted free agent. It's looking right now that he's going to be he's going to stay with the Chiefs, because there's speaking of which, can you touch on the CBA and Derek Johnson and free agency?
Well, I don't. Right now, they're trying to get a deal done. I mean, it makes sense for them. I mean, the NFL is still the big cash cow. I mean, it makes a lot of money. The players have gotten very rich. Now, I'm on the owner's side this round. I don't think it's fair that the players should get 60 to 61, 62% of the revenue. I think that's crap. I mean, that's not fair. The owners, yeah, they're billionaire cowboys, and they're billionaire babies and all these things, but they have stadium, they've got employees, they've got staff, they've got football operations, they've got general managers, ticket takers. I mean, there's a lot of expense to run an NFL franchise. And I don't think that the players should get 60% of the revenue. So kind of what they're hoping to do is, I think they'll increase the roster. I think you won't see a 45 active roster game day. You'll probably see 50, 53. Maybe they make the roster 55 or 56 or 58 players. They have maybe a 7 or 8 man taxi squad. So more players can earn more money and have the opportunity. You know, but the issue at hand right now is who's going to win. I mean, the owners for the first time are united. And you can talk about collusion, and you can talk about all these things that really hurt Major League Baseball when they went through their strike about a decade ago. Those things are going to be prevalent this time around because the owners are unified, and I think they're going to break this union in a way that the union is going to have to get back for the first time. What that means is a handful of players, not a handful, more than a handful of players, are in a situation who are 5-year free agents. If it's an uncapped year in March, then they're going to be restricted free agents, which means they can sign with any team, but there's going to be compensation. And how many teams are going to be out there willing to sign these players? Because I think the owners are working together, and they want a better system, and they want a fair system. Now, to the credit of the NFLPA and to Roger Goodell in the NFL Commissioner's Office, they have been sitting down. They have been talking. They met, I think, 2, maybe if not 3 times in December. They're planning a meeting again here in the next week or so. I think they want to hammer something out. But for the first time, a Gene Upshaw-less negotiation, we don't know how it's going to resolve. But this impacts the Chiefs. I mean, Derek Johnson needs to be starting on this football team. He's the best linebacker this organization has had probably in the last 4 or 5 years. There's no question in my mind. And he got in Todd Haley's doghouse, as everybody knows, just like Dwayne Bowe did and a bunch of other players. But at the end of the day, you saw what he can do. Now, they showed what he can do in pass coverage. I mean, we've seen him blitz. We've seen him get over 100 tackles in a season. This is a guy who works well in open space. What you saw on Sunday was the Derek Johnson from the University of Texas. He's not a guy that has a defined role. You put him in open space. If he's got the instincts to rush the passer, he's got the instincts to drop back, depending on the schemes that they call, is one thing. But he needs freedom in the field to make plays. And when you allow that, and that's a freelance part of his game that the Chiefs have never really developed. And he wants to stay in Kansas City. And the best thing about Derek Johnson is he's a good person. He's great in the community. He loves Kansas City. He's got a raw deal this year. And all the knock about him not being a great practice player, I don't care. Show up on game days. Improve your practice skills. But you know what? The guy in the offseason was here at 6 a.m. I mean, he was working, pumping iron. And to lose your job to Demario Williams, I thought was unfair. And Corey May's got a lot of reps. Again, he needs to be here next year. He needs to be starting. If they're going to stick to the 3-4, I hope the Chiefs are smart and bring him back.
And Jamal Charles, he really brought it strong. He came on the last 4 games of the season. As I mentioned at the top of the show, he broke the record that was set by Larry Johnson back in 2005. What do you think that means for this offense to base around Jamal Charles? What do you think they need this offseason to build around Jamal?
Well, I still think they need to improve the offensive line. I know Brian Waters commented yesterday or Sunday after the game, or Monday, I'm sorry, that he didn't think much had to be done. I mean, I think they need a new center. I love Rudy Neiswinger, but I just don't think he's strong enough to play the position. I think he'd be a better guard. I'm totally fine with Wade Smith at right guard. He played much better than Goff. In fact, once Goff was out and Smith came in, I mean, he's the best pulling guard I've seen in this organization probably since we had the Fab Five offensive linemen during the Trent Green era. So I really like him. Brian didn't play well this year. I think that it's amazing what this kid did in the last 5, 6, 7 games with a really poor offensive line. So I think this helps him. But, what this does for Charles and what it does for the Chiefs is now they've got a focal point for the offense in 2010. I still don't want him to have more than 25 carries a game. I think that's a mistake. And, and we just have to thank our blessings that Vinny Serrano, the former GM of the Washington Redskins, turned down the Chiefs' request for a 5th-round pick for Jamal Charles back in October, a day before the trade deadline. This would never have happened, and the Chiefs would be scrambling for a running back. I mean, the move to get rid of Larry Johnson was a good one. Jamal Charles was hurt because the playbook changed. The guy had studied it. He'd worked the entire offseason, and then 8 days to go, they changed the playbook. And I think that really hurt his development. So right now we know this. We know that he's a guy who's going to get 150, 200 yards, all-purpose yards, receiving, catching, and if he plays special teams. We know we've got still a top-flight receiver in Dwayne Bowe. We know we have a good number 2 in Chris Chambers. If we get a stretch-the-field wide receiver guy who's got some speed and can go down the middle of the field, this offense can be good. You get 2 new offensive line starters. Offensively, with Matt Castle, I think they're going to be fine. Again, I look at the schedule in 2010, peeking at it yesterday. There's 8 wins there if they make some changes on offense. Defensively, that's another matter entirely. But a new offensive coordinator is certainly going to help.
You heard it here first from Chiefs insider Nick Athan. For Shane Williams and the entire staff at Warpaint TV, thank you.